What if I told you that most of what you think you know about the Middle Ages is a lie? That the dark, dirty, and ignorant world we see in movies and on TV is a fantasy, a caricature painted by later generations to make themselves feel superior? We're about to shatter some of the most enduring myths about this thousand-year period. Forget everything you've been told. The truth is far more shocking and far more interesting. Let's start with a big one. Picture a medieval knight. What do you see? A hulking figure, barely able to move in a suit of armor that weighs a literal ton, needing a crane just to get on his horse. Right? That image is completely, utterly wrong. It's a myth that was popularized in the 19th century and cemented by Hollywood. So what's the reality? A full suit of plate armor from the 15th century, the peak of armor technology, weighed between 45 and 55 pounds. That's less than the gear of a modern firefighter or a fully equipped soldier today. Knights were supreme athletes. They could run, jump, do somersaults, and even climb ladders in their armor. Far from being clunky metal coffins, these suits were masterpieces of engineering, designed for maximum protection and mobility. They were the cutting-edge military technology of their day, and the men inside were agile, deadly warriors. The idea of a crane hoisting them onto a horse? Pure fiction. But what about their minds? Surely they were all ignorant, superstitious peasants who thought the world was flat? This is one of the most persistent and insulting myths of all. The fact is, no educated person in the Middle Ages believed the earth was flat. They had known it was a sphere since at least the 6th century BC, thanks to the ancient Greeks like Pythagoras and Aristotle. This knowledge was never lost. Monks, scholars, and navigators throughout the medieval period accepted the Earth's spherical shape. It was a basic tenet of their cosmology. So where did this flat Earth myth come from? It was largely invented in the 19th century by writers who wanted to create a conflict between science and religion, painting the medieval church as an institution that suppressed knowledge. It's a powerful story, but it's a fake one. The real story is of a society that preserved ancient knowledge and built upon it, creating the first universities and laying the groundwork for the scientific revolution. Okay, so they weren't clumsy and they weren't stupid, but they were filthy, right? They never bathed, their teeth were rotten, and they threw, well, you know what, out the window. Again, this is a grotesque exaggeration. While their standards of hygiene were certainly different from ours, medieval people were not fans of being dirty. Soap making was a widespread and established trade. Public bathhouses were common in towns and cities, a legacy of the Romans, where people could not only bathe but also socialize. Many castles and monasteries had complex plumbing systems for sanitation. People washed their hands before and after meals, and personal cleanliness was associated with godliness. The idea of them just tossing buckets of filth into the streets below is mostly a caricature. While medieval cities had sanitation challenges, they also had regulations to try and keep the streets clean. It wasn't a pristine paradise, but it wasn't the non-stop filth fest we imagine. So we have knights who are agile super soldiers, scholars who know the earth is round, and a populace that enjoys a good bath. The picture is already looking very different. But we've only scratched the surface. What about the belief that everyone died at age 30? Or that lords had the right to sleep with a peasant's new bride on her wedding night? Or that everyone drank beer and ale because the water was poison? It's time to unravel the biggest lies you've ever been told about this fascinating era. You've been patient. Let's blow these myths completely out of the water. That whole everyone dies in their 30s thing, it's a classic case of statistics being misunderstood. The average life expectancy was indeed low, around 30 to 35. But this number was massively skewed by incredibly high infant mortality rates. A huge number of children died before the age of 5. If you survived the perils of childhood, however, your chances of living to a ripe old age were actually quite good. It was not at all uncommon for people to live into their 50s, 60s, or even 70s. We have records of kings, queens, scholars, and merchants who lived long, full lives. So the Middle Ages wasn't a world populated only by the young. It was a world where making it through childhood was the great challenge. Now let's talk about something a little more scandalous, the so-called droit du seigneur, or the right of the lord. This is the infamous claim that a feudal lord had the legal right to have sex with a vassal's bride on her wedding night. It's a staple of historical fiction and movies like Braveheart, and it is a complete and total fabrication. There is not a single piece of credible historical evidence to suggest that this right ever existed as law. Not one. Historians believe the myth originated centuries later, during the Enlightenment, as a form of propaganda to portray the medieval aristocracy as monstrously tyrannical. It was a powerful way to say, look how far we've come from those barbaric times, but it's just not true. And what about the drinking? The idea that everyone, including children, drank weak beer and ale all day long because the water was unsafe to drink. This one has a grain of truth, but it's been blown way out of proportion. Yes, people drank a lot of ale and wine. It was a key source of calories and was often safer than water from an unknown source. But to say all water was poisonous is absurd. Towns and villages were built around reliable sources of clean water, wells, springs, and rivers. People understood the difference between clean and contaminated water. They didn't have germ theory, but they knew from experience that water from certain sources could make you sick. For most people, most of the time, water was the primary drink. Ale was a supplement, a staple of the diet, but not a replacement for water. Let's move into the battlefield. You've probably heard that the English longbow was this superweapon that could pierce straight through plate armor. The image of French knights at Agincourt being mowed down like tin cans is iconic. But it's not quite accurate. While the longbow was a formidable weapon, it was not a magic can opener. A direct, close-range shot from a heavy longbow could potentially penetrate the thinner parts of plate armor. But against the thick, hardened, and angled surfaces of a high-quality harness, an arrow would most likely glance off or fail to penetrate. The longbow's real power was in its rate of fire and its ability to wound horses, injure less armored soldiers, and disrupt enemy formations. It was a weapon of mass disruption, not a guaranteed armor piercer. These weren't just statistics and abstract facts. These myths have a real impact on how we view the people of the past. Let me tell you a few real stories that paint a much more vivid and human picture. Consider the story of Christine de Pizan. Born in Italy in 1364, she moved to the court of Charles V of France. After her husband died when she was just 25, she was left with 3 children and enormous debts. In an era where women had few options, she did something revolutionary. She picked up a pen. Christine became Europe's first professional female writer, composing poetry, biographies, and even military strategy manuals. Her most famous work, The Book of the City of Ladies, was a passionate and scholarly defense of women, attacking the rampant misogyny of the time and celebrating the achievements of women throughout history. This was a woman in the so-called Dark Ages who used logic and rhetoric to fight for her gender, all while successfully running a household and a literary career. Hardly the portrait of an oppressed, ignorant medieval woman. Or what about the Vikings? We think of them as horned, helmeted brutes who only knew how to rape and pillage. First off, they never wore horned helmets. That was an invention for 19th century opera. Secondly, while they were fearsome raiders, they were also some of the most skilled explorers, traders, and craftsmen of the era. A Viking burial discovered in the 1970s at Repton in England, believed to be the winter camp of the Great Heathen Army, revealed a fascinating complexity. Alongside the bones of nearly 300 individuals was evidence of a sophisticated society. They found Arabic coins indicating a trade network that stretched thousands of miles from Scandinavia to the Middle East. They were merchants as much as warriors, settlers as much as raiders. They founded cities like Dublin and left their genetic and cultural mark across Europe. Finally, think about the construction of the great cathedrals, like Notre Dame or Chartres. These weren't built by ignorant peasants using primitive tools. They were monumental feats of engineering, mathematics, and artistry that we would struggle to replicate even today. The master masons who designed them had a profound, intuitive understanding of geometry and physics. They developed revolutionary techniques like the flying buttress and the pointed arch to build higher and let in more light than ever before. These buildings were the space programs of their day, requiring generations of funding, planning, and skilled labor. They are a silent, towering testament to the ambition, the faith, and the sheer genius of the medieval mind. The Middle Ages were not dark, they were not ignorant. They were not 1,000 years of filth and stupidity waiting for the Renaissance to save them. It was a complex, dynamic, and innovative period of human history that laid the foundations of the modern world. The myths we tell ourselves about it say more about us and our need to feel advanced than they do about the people who actually lived it. If you enjoyed having your historical worldview turned upside down, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more myth-busting. Let us know in the comments which medieval myth you were most surprised to learn was fake. Thanks for watching.